this. Ohtani and Soto, do you think the Jays are involved in any way? See, because I think maybe with Ohtani, if he's traded in the offseason, I think that's when the Jays really go in and say, okay, let's try to figure out what we can do here.
Well, both of them, first of all, they're both incredible talents. Both of them fit what the Jays need directly because they probably still need one more starting pitcher, right, and they need to get more left-handed at the plate. Okay, so both of them are significant left-handed bats, so that's exactly what they need. Now, with respect to what the package would be, I believe, based on what I've been told in the last couple of days, that the Jays they've maybe dipped their toe in there. There's been some interest, but they're not significantly involved on Soto at the moment because what I believe is to be involved, they would have to trade Bo Bichette. He would have to be the piece, even though, irony of ironies, he's actually older than Soto.
Right.
How about that?
But he's a guy that comes in. You've got control. He'd certainly be the face of your franchise.
Correct. So they need right now position players. And I think for the Nationals' perspective, they would rather have Bo than Teoscar or Gurriel. I think that's probably where they're at right now. So I just think based on where the Jays are, unless you are able to make a second move that brings in a shortstop that you really like, I would have a hard time seeing. When you start going down the line, what are the chances, and this is like fantasy baseball and fantasy baseball, if you're going to take this out to another extent, do I really think that they can put Bo Bichette in a deal, get Soto, and then somehow find the prospects to trade and convince the Red Sox to give you Xander Bogaerts in the same division? That's just sort of bending the reality that I'm willing to walk into right now. It's an interesting thought, but I just don't see something like that happen.
What we've seen so far, and how do you think the next 30-odd hours will play out?
This is the year of Juan Soto, and I think that in many ways this deadline is going to be defined by when he gets traded. I said when. I believe he will be traded. I think it's probably 70 to 80% likelihood that he's going to move. There's just...
And you think that's gone up in the past couple of days, do you not?
I do.
Yeah.
There was, how about this, the very unique conversation at Nationals Park yesterday in game between Mike Rizzo, the Nationals GM, and his counterpart from the Cardinals, John Mozeliak, as their teams are playing. And there they were on camera in the suite, what we wouldn't give to know exactly what was being said in that conversation. But I just think that the Nationals have reached a point where they know they're not going to be able to sign him. They know they have to rebuild, and there are the right teams involved. The Cardinals probably have the best pieces of all of them, to be honest, in terms of up to the majors, close to the majors, players like Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker. You've got, obviously, current Major League players like Carlson and Gorman. Liberatore has already been in the Major League. So I think the Cardinals, in many ways, are the favorites. But the Padres are sufficiently desperate, in my estimation. And the Dodgers, we count them out at our own peril. Because think about how things unfolded last year with the Padres. They thought they had Max Scherzer right up until they didn't. Because the Dodgers have that unique power center of arguably best roster in the major leagues, best farm system, most resources. They can make almost any trade they want, and Soto fits their roster near-term and long-term.
Okay, I need you to explain why that would affect teams like Yankees, the Blue Jays, who aren't in on him. Why does that matter that he has to go first for those teams to do what they need to do?
It's a fair question, Kevin. I think it's because the secondary options, the fallbacks, are somewhat linked to those other teams. So, for example, if the Yankees, or let's say the Dodgers, if they don't get Soto, they might turn around and get Frankie Montas with some of the same prospects that were in the conversations with Soto. And Montas is someone that the Yankees like, is someone that potentially the Cardinals like. And so there are all these links to, well, I can't give up, if you're the Cardinals, I can't give up Mason Wynn for Montas right now because he might be in the package going for Juan Soto. So I think we see this happen sometimes where the major piece, whether it was Yu Darvish a number of years ago, sort of takes up all the oxygen. And there are a lot of if-then scenarios that are sort of fallback options and dominoes that are literally poised to fall at any time, but cannot until other choices are made.
Is there any fuel behind that fire?
I think the chances of him being traded are significantly lower than Soto, they're non-zero, but they're a lot lower than Soto. So I would say maybe a 10 to 20% chance he's traded. I do believe, and we all know Perry Manassian through his time with the Blue Jays. Knowing Perry as we do, I suspect he and his staff are workshopping what this trade could look like. And if Perry was sitting here and had to tell us the truth, I think he would tell us that he would certainly trade Ohtani if the right deal came along. But that's a very different conversation than for ownership, which I don't think wants
any
to.
chance he re-signs with the Angels? Because if that answer is no, why wouldn't you trade him?
I think the answer is no, Kevin, but I think the reason why you're not going to trade him is he is so unique and so inextricably linked to the way that they do business. You have the most marketable player that this sport has seen in a generation, probably since Griffey. And so at that point in time, you are still, even though you're in Orange County, you're still in the second largest market in the United States. There's a certain obligation to, if your fans are still showing up to watch him play, that you honor that charter, if you will, and fulfill the obligation to put the very best player on the field for you. I totally agree with you, Kevin. In a vacuum, you trade him today. You would trade Shohei Ohtani today, but you are not in a vacuum, and the business reality is such that I think the Angels feel compelled to keep him.
So even though you're not winning, you're making so much money off of him, you don't want to trade him, or you can't trade him. Is can't a too big of a word, or you don't want to trade him?
Don't want to is probably. Yeah. I mean, can't. To your point, can't is a very strong word, and I think if Artie Moreno really believed that this was the best thing for the organization, he would consider it. But the Angels right now, guys, they're stuck. You have Mike Trout with a back issue of some severity. We don't really know exactly what's going on, really, but it's not good.
He's not playing.
Right. It's not good. And then Anthony Rendon has an issue with his hand, and who knows where that goes in the future. And they have no depth organizationally. Yeah. They are not a deep team. So when you line up all of these reasons, it's going to take them a long time to be competitive again in the same division as the Astros. Consider how deep the Astros pitching is. Consider how much the Mariners have evolved. They're just not, the Angels are not going to be able to compete there with or without Ohtani in the next year. And I just think ownership right now would have to be thoroughly convinced by Perry Manassian that they must make this trade, especially if the team that's most equipped or most interested in trading for him is their immediate neighbor to the north, the Dodgers, or their immediate neighbor to the south, and the Padres.
Yeah, part of me, when I look at Shohei Ohtani at this trade deadline, one of the things we've talked about is how would you value Shohei Ohtani? He's a combination of what? Matt Olson and pick a pitcher. And part of me wonders, John, if what Perry Manassian and the Angels aren't doing right now is this is the first time they've had to figure out what the market value for Shohei Ohtani is, right? So this, if nothing else, should give them a baseline going into the offseason. And because, that's how GMs work. They put a player on the market. Ross Atkins has talked about this. Teams do this. You put a player on the market or you talk to GMs, and part of it is you're trying to figure out how other teams value that player. And that may be what this is. This may be, more than anything else, an information gathering process. So if you're Perry Manassian, you sit down in the offseason, you go to Artie Moreno and saying, look, this was the best offer that we had for Shohei Ohtani at the deadline. It's the offseason. We think we can get more for him. And I wonder if that isn't really what we're seeing with Ohtani, because I think Ohtani's gone, but to me, that's an off-season move. And if you wait in the off-season, then you're bringing in other teams. The Washington Nationals have new ownership. The Washington Nationals may say, we need a face of the franchise. Shohei Ohtani, let's go. Pillage our minor league system, what's ever left of it. So, that's the way I've kind of viewed the Ohtani situation just from being down at the ballpark for the weekend. It's hard to generalize because different levels in the organization view players differently. I'm sure the player development people view prospects differently than the major league coaching staff does, right? The major league coaching staff, their jobs depend on winning this year. It's minor league depth is nice. Minor league depth, dudes in single A aren't going to help John Schneider this year.
Nope.
They're just not. But everything you hear is that, and this is a compilation of things from people, you hear, one, I don't think Gabriel Moreno is off the table. Again, it depends. Maybe for Ross Atkins' mind, he is, and that's all that matters. But I do get the sense, I really get the sense that they don't want to trade Ricky Tiedemann. They view him as a guy who could have the same impact that Alek Manoah has had in the team. And Aurelvis Martinez, boy, you get people in the organization who will tell you, this guy, there's a lot of swing and miss. He could be Mikhail Franco. You get other people who look at him and say that
can't teach power, and he's got a lot of it.
He has got a ton of power, and he's still young. So that's kind of where we are. And in terms of players off the major league roster, look, Teoscar Hernandez is the closest to free agency of any of the key players. Leave Matt Chapman aside for a minute. Teoscar Hernandez is the closest to free agency. They have not been able to sign him to a multi-year contract. There's no indication that the sides were even on the same page when they were talking. That might factor into the decision. We talked a little bit about Bo Bichette. At some point, the Bo and Vladdy discussion is going to have to happen. Maybe the Jays are happy going year to year with them. Maybe they're happy with the Jays going year to year with them. But my sense is there will come a time where the Jays will have to look. They'll have to swallow hard and say, what are we going to do with these two guys? But that, to me, isn't a decision you make in season. That, to me, is a decision you make in the offseason when you can move some pieces around and when you have a broader market.
I'll just say this. There's only one guy, Marino. That for me is, I think they saw the way it looked when Danny Jansen's not here. That's the one thing for me. Championship seasons need the guy to put the fingers down. He's sort of like a really good umpire. A good catcher puts the fingers down. What Danny Jansen gives you offensively, run into one, get a big hit occasionally. I want you on the defensive side. The way you set up, the way you call a game, the way you get a subpar pitcher through big moments of games. Danny Jansen does it better than the other two do. And Kirk's gotten better. And I think they know that, if they can maneuver around Kirky to make sure his body type can make it through the grind of a 162-game season to where they're getting his best come October, they're okay getting rid of Marino. That's just me, the way I understood it. Now, people ain't going to like that because, people are in love with the top prospect thing. But I think if they had to, I think they'll do it. But they're not going to give him up just to be giving him up. They have to have a good reason. Pablo Lopez would be a good reason, I would think. Sounds like he's available. I mean, I'm sure it would start with that name.